Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fire Up Florida. My name is Scott Morganroth. Pleased to be joined by Adam Lichtenstein. Adam and I, this is our first year covering the Miami Hurricanes. I've been doing a lot of other stuff, but I was glad I could finally get back involved with the Hurricanes. I covered them, though, back in the early 80s when a guy by the name of Howard Schnellenberger was there, Jim Kelly, Mark Rick, Kyle Vanderwen, and a string of a lot of people. But I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague, Adam. And Adam, it was so great working with you this year. I know that, it was just good to get to know you during the media day. And of course, you welcomed me really well during the spring game over I call Lockhart Stadium. Don't get me to start throwing over. I'm not doing it. Sorry. They want to write us a handsome check. I'll call it what they want me to. And I said us, not me. Okay. Just remember, I want to preface that. So great to have you on the program tonight talking Canes football.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, first season on the beat. And like you said, you covered the Schnellenberger team, so you have some experience with some growing pains with a new coach. I think they go like 5-6 that first year, 79, something like that.
Yeah, I actually started covering them in '82. So and then
They were already
'82.
good.
Well, they're getting better. I mean, I wrote a story one time on Jim Kelly being a Heisman Trophy candidate. How that worked out? The guy got busted up in Virginia against the Hokies. Not going to get into that. I wonder how many of these people. Well, there might be some diehard Hurricanes that remember that. But meanwhile, you and I are obviously, we'll get to Tyler Van Dyke in just a moment. But it's just kind of neat that we were able to see a new era start. And with that said, Adam, before I go into the questions, why don't you let everybody know where you work for and how they can get a hold of you off the bat?
I work for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. You can follow me at AB Lichtenstein. Last name spelled like it is on the screen. Not the easiest last name to spell, but there it is.
I don't know. Should I say Lichtenstein is just as big as Schnellenberger? I don't know.
It's probably close, yeah.
Yeah, well, we all
Both
know.
very
I would.
German.
Yeah, well, I would say Schnellenberger's name would probably be bigger than any of them, but yours is up there too. I mean, I don't put mine up there, but it isn't quite as big as yours. But nevertheless, we'll just say you are who you are, and I'm not in the business to give nicknames. We only properly ID the way we do, and as I said before, yeah, I go back a little ways. I covered the Canes from '82, '83, and then I ended up moving on to University of South Florida from '84 to '86, and I'm a Brahmin bull by trade. That's what the ring says, anyways. But all right, well, back to the Canes. And what better place, Adam, than to start with the coach, Mario Cristobal. How would you rate his first season? Do you give him a mulligan for a 5-7 record?
A bit. I mean, I entering the year, I thought the Hurricanes. I bought into, if you want to call it hype or expectations. I picked them to go 9-3 and win the ACC Coastal. I thought they were set to kind of not so much rebuild and just kind of get some extra new pieces in and be off and running. That's kind of what I expected this year, and that's obviously not what happened. Basically, everything that could have gone wrong at some point did go wrong. So like a half mulligan. Apparently, the roster might not have been as good as we expected it to be in August. So maybe get a half mulligan for that, but I don't think the team should have been 5-7. They let some things get away from them. They had some losses. Like even with the talent, if you say the talent wasn't good enough, they should have had enough talent to beat Middle Tennessee State. If you beat Middle Tennessee State, then you make a bowl game, and the season looks a lot more successful if you even just get one more win. Or they came a touchdown away from potentially tying and maybe beating A&M. That loss looks a lot worse in retrospect because A&M ended up having a very bad season too. They could have Duke had a good year, but you should think Miami should beat Duke basically every season. Things like that. So half mulligan, definitely not out on Cristobal or anything like that. But it wasn't the season I think they hoped for.
Yeah, no doubt about the Middle Tennessee game. The Miami Hurricanes had a habit of getting behind early, and when they were getting behind early, then it usually ran into trouble. Before I go any further, I just want to let everybody know that this show can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Georgia, wherever you get your podcast. So please go out there if you're on the subway nationally, or whether you're on your bike, car, whatever. This is how you can do it. Also, if you on your regular device, feel free to subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. That's where you can see Adam and I talking Miami Hurricanes football. So it's really easy. Go to youtube.com and please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. We would greatly appreciate that. So getting back to Middle Tennessee, Adam, I didn't see that one coming. I mean, I realized, to me, that if there's ever a loss that caught me off guard, that was it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I don't think anybody expected that. Because Middle Tennessee is they're not like a Appalachian State, a team that, okay, they're playing like G5 level, but they're still pretty solid. Like they're not a particularly great team. I don't know what their final record ended up being, but I don't think they are bowl eligible.
Right.
I don't think they're a particularly great team, but they just had Miami's number that day, and Miami made a lot of mistakes and couldn't get anything going on offense for long stretches, and it was just and we're going back to September now, but that was just a absolutely brutal game that I don't think, like you said, I don't think anybody saw that coming. I think everyone thought Miami was going to kind of cruise to a win.
Yeah, to some extent, I'm giving Miami a mulligan, but don't tell that to Leon Searcy, whom I had on Inside the Pigskin on Thursday night on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, as well as our audio provider. He wasn't giving him a mulligan at all. He said they simply, but you're talking about a former player, though, too, Adam, who has high expectations at won championships at the U. So I can appreciate it, but 5-7, they were 7-5 a year ago under Manny Diaz. I still think they made the right call bringing in Mario. I don't care. I mean, I didn't know much about Manny, so I'm not going to sit there and comment on a guy that I didn't know a lot about. I think they brought in Mark Richt, maybe was a little bit past his prime, but he's still providing him with some winning seasons as well. So, all right. With that said, so I will to some extent give him a mulligan, and we'll get into the expectations later on. With that said, okay, let's talk about Tyler Van Dyke, the quarterback. Do you think he's going pro, or do you think he's going to come back?
I think it looks like he's going to come back. I haven't been able to confirm it myself, but I know another outlet reported that he is coming back along with Jake Garcia. But like I said, I have not been able to confirm that myself. So that's a big deal for Miami. They need that quarterback room because if he transferred or if Jake Garcia transferred or left to the NFL, they'd be down, to guys with not a lot of experience. And I think Tyler Van Dyke coming back would be really, really big for them. I don't think he was as bad as he was in the beginning of the season. He had a really rough start to the year, if you remember. He had a couple of really bad games, including that Middle Tennessee State game where he got benched. He had a really tough start. Took him a while to adjust to Josh Gaddis' offense. Right. And then he starts picking things up. He had, close to 500 passing yards against UNC and almost got them a win in that game. He had, I want to say, 350 or so against Virginia Tech. He was starting to come around and improve, and then he gets hurt against Duke. And he tried to fire things up again twice, which you got to give him a lot of credit for. He tried to come back against Florida State, and that didn't go so well. And he tries to come back against Pitt, and then he goes down on the first drive again. Like he really wants, you can tell he really wants to get back on the field, and I got to give him credit for that. But I do think, there was talk about him being a potential first round pick entering the season. This season's draft stock definitely took a hit, so I think it might be in the best interest of him and for Miami for him to come back.
It's amazingly, Adam, I'm glad you segued to Josh Gaddis. In August, when we had a chance to do the media day thing, I had a lot of time with Josh and got to know, of course, I have ties to Michigan, being a Metro Detroit guy, and I know he's the offensive coordinator for University of Michigan. For some crazy reason, and I know it didn't happen, but it kind of made me intrigued. I was wondering whether Cade McDonald would have transferred to join Josh Gaddis here at Miami. Listen, I never thought I'd see Josh Gaddis come down here, let alone the fact that I do predict at some point the guy will eventually be a future head coach. So let's talk about how you would rate offensive coordinator Josh Gaddis, and do you think he'll be around in 23?
That's the $1 million question. How would I rate Josh Gaddis? I have to put a letter grade on it. I don't want to be overly harsh because, like I said, their roster might not be as talented as we expected it to be, and the players that we expected to step up didn't. Like a guy like Keyshawn Smith, we expected him to have a big season at wide receiver, and he didn't. Frank Ladson only got in so much. Like, we kind of maybe overestimated the talent a little bit, but it definitely was not a successful season. I mean, they didn't score a touchdown in 3 separate games. And anytime you do that, you're not in great shape. They didn't score a touchdown against A&M. They didn't score a touchdown against FSU. They didn't score a touchdown against Virginia, but they still managed to win that game. Anytime you do that, that's just tough. and their offensive numbers, like overall for the season, are pretty bad. Like I want to say they're in the 90s or something nationally for points per game and around there for yards per game. Like it was a bad season on offense. Do I think he's back for 2023? I lean towards no. But I don't know that for sure, and I wouldn't be shocked. Like, I wouldn't be shocked either way. I wouldn't be shocked if he, maybe says, "Okay, this isn't the right fit, and I'm gonna go somewhere else." I wouldn't be shocked if he comes back and says, "Let me give this a go. Maybe we get some better players through the transfer portal, get some more offensive weapons, get some more guys healthier, get some more depth, and we can run things the way we want to do this coming season." So it's hard to say. I lean towards no, but I wouldn't be shocked either way.
Okay, so we've talked about Gaddis, Adam, but do you think that there will be a fair amount of turnover with the assistant coaches per se beyond Josh Gaddis? Because let's face it, 5-7 doesn't get it done. I got watching Mario Cristobal, one of the most straightforward individuals I've ever seen, hard as rock, and nobody wants to win worse than he does. He's definitely a South Florida person if I ever saw one anyhow. But let's assess the rest of the assistant coaches on the staff, and you think there will be a large turnover?
I don't think there will be a huge turnover. I think if there was going to be like a massive shift, we might have already started to see it. But also, something interesting to keep in mind is that like when Cristobal was putting together his staff, about 10, 11 months ago, he didn't hire Josh Gaddis first and Kevin Steele first, and then have them fill out their staff. He personally picked out a lot of these assistant coaches who he brought in, in different than Kevin Steele and Josh Gaddis. It wasn't like he brought in Josh Gaddis and Josh Gaddis brought along all his guys, and he hired Kevin Steele and Kevin Steele brought in all his guys. Like he kind of went in and picked out these assistant coaches. So, I don't think we're going to see I don't think we're going to see Josh Gaddis get fired and the entire offensive staff get fired, or the same thing on the defense. I think if he's going to make any changes, then he'll probably pick and choose his spot. So I don't think we're going to see a mass exodus, and especially because of that, if Mark Cristobal were to fire 4 offensive assistant coaches, well, that's a reflection on him, because it's not, like I said, it's not like Josh Gaddis brought all his guys with him.
Right.
It's people that Mario Cristobal picked out himself. So then it's like kind of a repudiation of everything he just decided to do 10 months ago, 12 months ago.
So you're saying basically it's a bad look if he gets too carried away by letting too many guys go.
Yeah, and I think he'll probably evaluate, again, what you kind of put as the true talent level, and see what guys might have underperformed their talent, and where maybe guys were overhyped to begin with and maybe weren't that good. And, maybe the coaches, weren't able to get that much out of them because they aren't as good as they expected them to be. It's a weird balancing act, I think. It's, you always have to balance how much is a coach's responsibility versus how much is a player's ability. You know what I mean? It's always a tough thing to kind of balance.
Well, you alluded to it. Now we're going to get to it. I have to make sure I grill you when I see you the next time. You know what GMTA stands for?
No.
Great minds think alike. So that way, that's my word of wisdom. Every time I see it, and we go ahead and, compare information. And, you and I, when we were working, I always felt like when we were talking, it was just a respectful exchange anyhow, because I, learn from you, but I also try to base a lot of what I've done over my past experience, not only covering the Canes, but other college football as well. So, but with that said, okay, under the GMTA classification, I was thinking about the portal, and now I'm going to lead into the portal. Okay, so how much will Miami be active in the transfer portal? Because I know Coach Mario Cristobal after the final game looked like he was a man possessed to look that thing over and knows that he needs a little bit of work to do, and it's a quicker way to get to relevance.
Oh, I definitely expect Miami to be very active in the transfer portal. I know they've already, sent out a couple offers to some guys. I expect them to be very active. I mean, they're losing. I think right now the count is at 11 or 12 players who've already announced they're transferring. So, you want to replace those guys. I mean, you're bringing in some freshmen as well, but you want to bring in that talent as fast as possible and try to flip the roster as fast as possible. And the portal is a great way to do that. So I expect them to be very, very active in the portal. I think we'll see things. It's going to be a very busy few weeks for sure.
All right. Well, with that said, okay, can you to the best of your ability, summarize who's gone and who will stay.
Well, to summarize, I think they need to bring in some guys in the secondary and the defensive line. That they've already lost. I think I counted earlier, and they've already lost 6 defensive backs in the transfer portal. Avante
Okay.
Williams, Isaiah Dunson, Al Blades Jr., which is kind of a surprise to me, considering he's a Miami legacy. And a couple other guys, Keyshawn Washington, and then on the defensive line, the big one today was Daryl Jackson Jr., who was started a bunch of games for Miami this year. I think started most, if not all, of the games for Miami at defensive tackle. He announced he's transferring. He'd only been at Miami for one season. He just transferred to Miami from Maryland in the spring.
Right.
So it was pretty surprising to see him go. He was probably Miami's second best interior defensive lineman behind Leonard Taylor. So him leaving is really tough. And they lost another couple of defensive linemen as well, Alan Hay and Elijah Roberts. They lost a couple other defensive linemen to graduation. So that was a unit that was really a strength for them this year. And it just got significantly less deep. Or shallower, I guess would be the word. But that the portal is a good place to do that. They brought in a bunch of defensive linemen through the portal last year, and it paid off. Hakeem Mesidor was incredible. Mitchell Agude was very good on the defensive line. Jake Lichtenstein did a solid job when he was healthy. Daryl Jackson, although he's leaving now, was very good for them this year. So it's definitely a position those are positions you can upgrade in the portal, and I think they're gonna definitely be looking really for the entire defense, because I think they're gonna want to upgrade at linebacker as well.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, we talked about the Hurricanes quarterback situation earlier, so let's go ahead and dig a little bit deeper into it. We know about Tyler Van Dyke. You mentioned Jake Garcia. And what's the other guy? Jacurri Brown?
Jacurri Brown, yeah. I think it's spelled Jacurri, but it's pronounced Jacurri.
Yeah, well, then I hope Cameron Gorby doesn't beat me up that I wouldn't quite able to get pronounced. And if I am Cameron, I'll take it like a man. But at least I mentioned him anyways. He got close, even at the spelling. God, it threw me off. So, all right, well, let's assess anyways. I like, in the sample size I saw with Brown, I saw a good dual thread quarterback. Saw a guy like Jake Garcia who was solid, a pocket type of guy. Had some good skills. And of course, we know about Tyler Van Dyke. He'll eventually be playing pro football, providing he get through a year healthy. But so tell me, Adam, how would you go ahead and assess the Hurricane situation for 23 and maybe beyond that?
Well, assuming, like you said, that Tyler Van Dyke and Jake Garcia do return, I don't think Jacurri Brown's going anywhere. Then you'll have 5 total scholarship quarterbacks. You got Van Dyke, who would almost certainly, barring something crazy, would be the starter, assuming he comes back. Jake Garcia behind him, Jacurri Brown behind him, Peyton Matoka, who's been there for a little while, all buried on the depth chart. And then they'll have true freshman Emory Williams. Barring, I don't expect them to go after, if Garcia and Van Dyke are coming back, I don't expect them to go after a portal quarterback. Okay. And they'll probably not add a second. They had a second quarterback in the recruiting class, Jaden Rashada, but he decommitted last month and put to Florida. So one high school quarterback in that recruiting class, probably no transfers. So that's a 5 quarterback room is a pretty solid group. And then Jacurri Brown, mixed bag. But he's a true freshman. I think there's a lot of things he needs to work on, and I think he knows there's a lot of things he needs to work on. Obviously, an incredible athlete, made some really good runs, especially against Georgia Tech. He was really fun to watch in that game. Had some struggles against Clemson, but asking a true freshman quarterback to face a Clemson defense is a really tough task. So, not like a storybook season debut for Jacurri Brown, but, definitely a lot of promise there. Jake Garcia, man, he looked rough at times. Had a bunch of picks, a bunch of fumbles. He had some really tough times, but he also had some positive moments. He looked pretty good when he came in to relieve Tyler Van Dyke against Middle Tennessee and threw 2 touchdowns in that game. He didn't look amazing on the road at Virginia, but it was kind of a really gritty performance in his first career start. And he didn't look amazing, but he kind of gritted through it, and he got them the win. He ran in the game-winning 2-point conversion in overtime, which, again, you got to give him a little credit, some credit for that, even though it wasn't the best game, of his career. But he's better than that. He's a better quarterback than I think what he showed at times this past season. And I think if he develops right, he'll be a solid quarterback, at Miami, or if he eventually elects to transfer at the D1 level. So overall, I mean, you can't. I think the shine is off maybe the quarterback room because this time last year, you're thinking, oh, Tyler Van Dyke's a first round pick and Jake Garcia is a top 50 prospect behind him. And, so some of the shine might be off after this year, but there's still plenty of potential and talent in that room.
All right, folks. So just in case you're joining us, Fire Up Florida. My name is Scott Morganroth. Please be joined by Adam Lichtenstein. Adam writes for the South Florida Sun Sentinel, and he's my colleague covering the Miami Hurricanes. Just to let you know, the show can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching it live on Facebook, Twitter, as well as our YouTube, just so you know, that doesn't take much to subscribe to our channel. Go to youtube.com, hit South Florida Tribune, hit subscribe. So while this is a local Florida show, it's also national too, Adam, because obviously we know nowadays media reaches a lot further. So this is something that we really enjoy doing. And again, our time with the Canes, for me, I don't know about you, it was more of a learning to how to get a feel for a new coach as well. And I got to spend a special thanks to the Miami Hurricanes communications department, who were absolutely fantastic and treated myself and my photographer, Candy Ambling, well. And of course, having to meet some first-class individuals like you, and as well as a lot of my colleagues that I view as family and teammates to try to weather this. So thanks to everybody out there. So like I said, Fire Up Florida, I am pleased to be joined by Adam. So with that said, okay, let's continue on. Let's talk about the Canes. What do they need? Strong points, weaknesses.
They could use help at most positions, I would say. Like, frankly, you go 5-7, you need to improve in most areas. We talked about the defense a few minutes ago. I think they could stand to upgrade and get more depth really on the line, linebacker, defensive back. Like, they could use some guys at basically all those positions. And on the offensive side of the ball, like I just said, I don't expect them to bring in another quarterback, assuming that Van Dyke and Garcia are staying. Running back, they're losing Thad Franklin in the portal. He actually, I think, off the top of my head, I think he had more touchdowns than any running back on the team. I think he had 5 because he was kind of used a lot in those kind of short yardage goal line situations, his big back. They'll have Henry Parrish back. They'll have probably Jalen Knighton back, I would assume. They'll have Don Chaney, who will hopefully be healthy, and Javonte Citizen, who will hopefully be healthy. So that's 4 backs right there. And I think they still want to add a running back in their recruiting class. They could definitely use some help at wide receiver because they never really had that go-to receiver. And Will Mallory, as good of a season as he had, was their number 1 receiver. And if your tight end is your top receiver, unless he's a transcendent player like a Kyle Pitts or someone, or Brock Bowers, then that kind of tells you about your offense. You want that. You need a receiver who can draw those coverages, who can make big plays, and they didn't really have that this year. And they also, part of that's because they had some injury stuff. Xavier Restrepo was off to a good start, and then he got hurt for a while. Colby Young didn't really develop till later in the season. He could be a really solid contributor, but they don't really have like that game-changing wide receiver. If they could find one in the portal, that'd be fantastic. Because right now, their only receivers who are committed are Nathaniel Joseph and Robbie Washington, who are both very good players. They're both 4-star prospects, but I don't know if those guys will be able to come in and fill that kind of role as freshmen. And then tight end, they're losing Will Mallory. They have Elijah Arroyo coming back from a season-ending injury, so you got to see what his health is like. Jaleel Skinner, I'm very high on. If he can learn how to kind of fill out a little bit and become better at blocking, I think he'll be a very solid tight end. And he was like a top 100 prospect last year. He's only a true freshman, so definitely room to develop there. And then the offensive line, like, you can always use up more offensive linemen and fill out that depth. They're going to lose a couple guys, I think, to graduation. So you can always use some more guys on the line, get some more big bodies. And that's just, Mario Cristobal himself is a former offensive lineman, so he wants to kind of play that physical, beat guys in the trenches kind of football. And you need a lot of offensive linemen to do that because, as we saw this year, offensive linemen get hurt. Zion Nelson only played in 2 games. And I think 3 different offensive linemen had season-ending injuries. Justice Oluwaseun had a season-ending injury. Jonathan Dennis, Jalen Rivers, they all got knocked out in the second half of the season by injury. So you need a lot of guys, a lot of capable guys. You can't just have 5 starting offensive linemen. You need to basically really, really be too deep at every position minimum to feel confident in an offensive line depth.
All right. Well, the only thing I'll say about Will Mallory is he'll be playing in an NFL uniform next year. The guy's good. And I enjoyed working through him. Well, of course, all the players I talk with the Canes, but there's something about Will Mallory. I can't put a finger on it. Maybe you can help me here, Adam. Okay.
Oh,
Mature,
you're
mature
right.
kid. Yeah, he's a mature kid. He's dependable. He's going to be playing in the NFL. I know USFL, XFL. Sorry, I'm not giving you a plug. This kid's an NFL player. I really, truly, in my mind, believe that Will Mallory, and I'm sure there might be other pro prospects, but throughout the way that Will Mallory carried himself during the year, we know there was a lot of adversity surrounding injuries and a lot of different things. The learning curve that, I like to classify Mario Cristobal in the manner for which Gene Hackman in the movie Hoosiers would say, let's see what hand I've been dealt. Well, okay, if you're a Hoosiers guy, which is my favorite movie, I have to make a confession, my all-time favorite movie. There's some other ones. I'm not going to get into a movie show here, although I could. Mario Cristobal knows what hand he's been dealt, and he always got to worry about Will Mallory was not the problem. This guy's going to be making some money. He don't need that name, image, and likeness. He's going to be getting that thing called a pro paycheck in the old-fashioned way. So, all right, so let's talk about how long, Adam, it will take for the Miami Hurricanes to be contenders.
That is a fantastic question. Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't say for sure. If you'd ask me,
or a crystal ball, and you know what, I'm sorry, Adam, but you really set me up for that, and I kind of had to do it. So go ahead. I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
That's fair.
You handed it up brilliantly, pal.
I don't have any tea leaves to read, but okay. If I had to put a year on, if you'd asked me like before this season, I might have said this team could contend for a playoff spot, especially with an expanded playoff, maybe 2024. Now, maybe push that back a year or two. I do think with a 12-team playoff, that Cristobal will bring in the talent to get the team to that point. Like if you ask me, will Miami be a top 12 team in the country in the next 4 years? I'd say more likely than not. I'd guess. I'd say yes. I'd say probably more likely than not. Would I guarantee it? No, but I think it's definitely likely because I think he can flip this roster in a year or two. And it's the year they have this year. It's tougher to say, oh, they're going to be great next year. No, it might be still more of a rebuild next year as well. But it's hard to say without knowing. There's probably going to be 30 new players on this roster next year at least. So it's hard to say now that they'll be good or bad next year. So I do think he'll get things turned around. I think maybe you start looking at 24, 25, 26 as like at the time this team might start really hitting that next year. Now, again, we'll see how they do next year. We'll see what players they bring in. We'll see what recruits he manages to, grab from other schools because he's very good at that. And we'll see where things are, this time next year and say, okay, maybe they're on the cusp of competing or maybe they still need more time.
Well, I'm sure, Adam, it wouldn't surprise you that I go on a lot of shows myself. I'm invited on a lot of podcasts. And, since I live in Southern Florida, obviously the Canes are my team and I certainly endorse this team big time. But I have defended the Miami Hurricanes all year. And I'll tell you why I have defended them all year. No, because I don't have a fan inside me. I wouldn't know how to be a fan. But I do know what it's like for a brand new coach to walk into a situation and know that these are not his players. He needs the eyeball test that goes deeper than just watching film and what you do in spring practice, what you do in summer and so forth. So now and remember I asked him that question during our last press conference. Okay, now you've had a chance to see this team physically, right? Do you feel like you know a little bit more? How much more do you know? And I at that point too, the question was related to the quarterback, but I asked him lots of questions along those lines as the year went on. And he's the most honest individual. Will give you a straightforward answer. I think one of my favorite lines, you were there when I was thought, is he didn't worry about how many clicks you get. He's going to tell you straight. And anybody that can go out there and say, I don't care how many clicks you get, this is the answer, that guy's okay in my book. But getting back to my point, though, I defended him all year because I didn't think that Mario Cristobal was a miracle worker. He wasn't, and he never will be. The guy did a phenomenal job at Florida International University before he moved on from FIU. And if you can go ahead and win, get him to a bowl game with a lower tier school like that, and he has a feel for the area, he's going to be all right. I mean, no denying what he did up in Oregon and his other stuff. I don't want to get into other stuff. I'm focused on the U. So the guy has a track record for winning. And to me, I have no problem defending him because I do expect year two to be considerably different. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and put a win total on it. You're at 5-7. You think 7 or 8 wins maybe is to me realistic? I do. I think 7-5, 8-4. I think in year two in his program is realistic. What about you?
I would like I said, right now it's so difficult to say because the roster is going to be so different next year that I couldn't even guess. Like, I would want to see some improvement from them, but I can't say like, oh yeah, they're going to win 8 games. But the reason why I have confidence that Cristobal will get things right is that, what's the saying? It's like, oh, X's and O's and Jimmys and Joes or whatever. It's the Jimmys and Joes. Get good players, you'll have a good team, way more likely than not. And if you look at Cristobal's recruiting class this year, it's ranked 8th in the country. And it's ranked 8th in the country after a 5-7 season. How many coaches can bring in a top 10 recruiting class after a season like that? It kind of felt like during this year, because a lot of these players recruited were committed during the summer. So after every one of these big losses, Middle Tennessee, Duke, FSU, Pitt, where they got blown out or lost to teams they shouldn't have, or lost in bad fashion, I kept thinking, is this exodus from the class going to come? Who's going to decommit? Like, who's leaving this class? Like, who is seeing stuff they don't want to see? And that never came. The early signing periods in about 2 weeks, and that exodus never came. Jaden Rashada decommitted. It wasn't shocking. He's a blue chip quarterback, and he's all the way out in California. Not like he can just come around the corner and go to see Miami for a game or anything, like a lot of other players can because they're from Florida or from the South. It's a lot easier to come to a Hurricanes game on your own dime when you live in Miami or Tampa or even Georgia, as opposed to flying all the way out from Northern California. So that didn't shock me. And it was brutal to lose. It's tough to lose him. He's a very good quarterback. But he's the only player who's really decommitted since, like, the spring. They lost a couple of receivers earlier in the year, but that was months ago. That mass exodus never happened. So the fact that he was able to keep this class together when things were going very, very wrong on the field is a testament to his recruiting ability. And imagine if things start going well, how much better he can recruit when he can show recruits that, hey, what I'm doing is working. Because right now in this year, I think you could tell recruits, like, look, this is why I need you. I need you to come here because if you were here and you worked your butt off, you could play tomorrow. And he can do that in year one when it's not his players. You can't really do that 4 years from now. But if you start improving and the players you bring in start doing well, you can point to that and say, look, what I'm doing is going to work. So you're going to want to come down here and join us in it.
Well, what he's doing will not only work, it'll also probably get him in the NFL. We all know the Miami Hurricanes have a history of putting players in the NFL. I do want to point out in a few weeks, we're going to be releasing another edition of Fire Up Florida. And Adam, you should probably know about this one. My longtime friend, Larry Bluestein, for whom I've known over 40 years, and I spent some time during the Hurricanes' last game. So that's a show we're going to release over the holidays on another edition of Fire Up Florida. Larry and I spent, I would say, about 40-some minutes. And if there's anybody that knows about South Florida sports more than Larry Bluestein, please let me know, because I don't know many.
They don't exist.
Right. And I worked with him many years ago down here back in the 80s, and we've been friends for a long time. So I'm looking forward to releasing that probably during the holidays. So it's good that we're able to try to do the best we can to do what we have Hurricanes during the off season. And I'm sure you and I will be in touch as we continue to update our listeners and followers as well to keep them posted. I mean, now the games are over, but like Coach Cristobal said, the games may be over, but the work is beginning. And he even mentioned to us a lot of times, you don't know if it's a rebuild or not a rebuild, but at least the man was being up front and honest about it. So really, as we conclude the show, is there anything else that you want to add, Adam? I like that. Add Adam. Boy, we're coming up with some incredible analogies tonight. And I haven't even had a whole lot of Diet Mountain Dew. It probably gets worse later on. But anyways, is there anything you want to add, Adam, that we haven't talked about so far? The floor is yours.
As far as the Hurricanes go, I mean, it's going to be very interesting a couple weeks coming up with the transfer portal and with the early signing period. Because, like I said, the Hurricanes have a very good class right now. They're looking at a few more players that they want to add out of high school, some potentially very, very highly rated players. And, if they're able to land some of these guys, I mean, you could potentially be looking at a top 5 recruiting class, which would truly be a feat to get a top 5 class when you have a season when you go 5-7. So we'll see how things go. It's going to be very interesting to follow the next couple of weeks.
All I can tell you is I'm looking forward to seeing you over at spring practice. And I do know that this will be our second year working together, second year on the beat. So I can see a lot of interesting things taking place over there. But with that said, okay, as we wind down here, why don't you once again, Adam, please let everybody know how they get a hold of you. I'll give our information, then we'll be ready to plan another show down the line. So go ahead. The floor is yours, Adam.
Yep. Best way to reach me is on Twitter. Hopefully Twitter stays in existence. I know it's having some bug problems, some ownership issues, but you can find me on Twitter at AB Lichtenstein. Lichtenstein obviously spelled the way it is on the screen.
Very good. All right. I'll go over our info one more time. The show can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. Please go to youtube.com. Hit the subscribe South Florida Tribune button. Then you'll get all of our remote access as well as some of our streams and whatever else we have looking for as well. Also, our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. We have all of our broadcasts located there as well as our written stories. And we have a wide range of media distribution partners, including all the different broadcasts that we have on the network. Special shout out to Candy Ebling, who does a phenomenal job putting it all together. What she does, you talk about a person who's a jack of all trades. She's definitely it. I do want to mention one little personal note that I think people can appreciate. I want to wish my dad, Mike Morgenroth, a happy birthday and wish him many more. If he hears his broadcast, he's going to kill me, but I don't care. But he did turn 82 years young, so it doesn't matter. So, Dad, happy birthday. Love you. And more importantly, it's just so great to finally have a chance to put this show together with you, Adam. Again, the way I enjoy working with you. What else can I say? But
thank you for having me.
So, all right. Well, once again, this concludes this edition of Fire Up Florida. On behalf of Adam Lichtenstein, my name is Scott Morgenroth. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you on the next edition of Fire Up Florida. Once again, folks, have a happy holiday season. Adam, you especially, my friend. Go out there and have a happy Hanukkah season greetings, and etc. etc. ... So if I'm forgetting anything, the etc. bails me out. So, and one last time, thank you very much to the communication staff of the Miami Hurricanes for making my life and my job a lot easier. But the only thing I told Cameron when I left during the final game, we have a lot more to do. We're only looking to do what we did even better in 2023. The only thing that we're hoping for at that point is let's just go out there and get a couple more wins. They win, they do. If not, it's all about us doing our job regardless of the outcome anyway. So, meanwhile, thanks again for joining us on Fire Up Florida. Take care. We'll see you the next time. Good night, everybody.